am so thrilled today to have Jeanet Wade with me. She's an expert implementer. She has a lot of great reflections in terms of not only her own experience of building a practice, but of helping newer implementers come through the ranks and just kind of observing what I'll call, I'll just blankly call some knuckleheaded stuff that we all keep doing, even though we know better. We all know better, right? But first of all,
Yep.
thank you. Thank you for
Yes,
coming.
absolutely.
In terms of, the way I like to think about it is that, we've got a rich history of data. We've got 911 implementers right now. We've got plenty of people who have gone through this system who have learned from each other in terms of best practices of building a practice, yet we keep making the same dumb mistakes. I'm sure you've made a mistake or two, have you?
10, 12, 100,
Or 10, 12. Okay, so yeah, I'm
or
here.
I try to move on and forget it. I'm a 9 quick start, so it's a lot of innovate, move on, but it is funny. So this is a lot of human nature, right? I think this is everything. I think parents experience this. People try to tell their kids or children in their family, don't do my dumb mistakes. And every kid does the dumb mistakes anyway, generation after generation. So I don't think it's different for implementers, even though the system is real, proven results. And yet we don't hear it. We don't do it. And all of us in some way, shape, or form figure, well, we're going to figure it out on our own. And I think a lot of that, though, is when you go through your own pain, you actually learn faster. So it's possible that you hear it and you're like, well, let me try some things just to make sure. And then you're like, I should have just not wasted 2 years and just done what they told me. And every implementer I've seen in 13 or more years come through the system has done that and regret it. And we all have our regret stories. And I wish I had just listened and followed what they told me.
I want this to be truly like crawling around in your brain. I want to pretend, for the listener, I want them to be out there having a beverage with you or at a QC at a, quiet spot somewhere and lean in and tell us what's one total boneheaded thing that you did.
So I was in the first 50 implementers. The boot camp I went through was Gino Wickman and Don Tinney led and facilitated and coached us. So those were the boot camps back then. We would travel out to Livonia, Michigan to Gino's session room, a very modest room near a Holiday Inn. And we didn't get the before boot camp dinners and any of the accoutrements that you guys get now. We showed up, we were in a session room that overlooked a parking lot. We just learned EOS. My first boneheaded move, and Gino pointed it out in boot camp. So he's like, in early days of implementers, we were more in Colby MO, high quick starts than we are today.
Okay.
I would say since about 2021, we've seen more high fact finders come through the system. But in the early days, we were kind of pioneers, entrepreneurs, starfish. We experimented a little more. And Gino's like, I have this room full of quick starts. And I was a marketing strategist, innovator in my past. I'm a 9 quick start in Colby, 9 out of 10. And he said, I know exactly what you're going to do, Jeanet, from your consulting practice of the past and the work you've done in your career. You're not going to follow our process. You're going to rearrange the order. You're going to do vision first, traction second, instead of traction first, vision second. You're going to want to only work on the tools that are fun and engaging. And you're gonna muck it up. He goes, but go play. Go have fun. Go prove me wrong. And the very first thing I did on my second client was I flipped it. I did vision first because they asked for it. They're like, well, can we work on our strategy first instead of this accountability chart? And like many implementers, that focus day was a scary day because we spent a lot of time going right to the root in pain with the accountability chart. And people resist it and they fight and they cry and they get angry. And I was like, I want to do fun stuff first. And that's what they're asking for, someone to rearrange it. And that client felt on their face and couldn't quite get it. And it wasn't working and I couldn't figure it out. So of course I call up my coach, who's Gino. He's like, you did it, didn't you? And I said, yes, Gino, I did it. I rearranged everything and added my own flavor and whatever it was I wasn't supposed to do, I did. And the client is like, this doesn't feel right and it's not working for us. And they quit. I didn't learn then. I did it again. And again, I did it 3 or 4 times before I was like, oh, we have a proven process. He's already pulled all the levers in a certain order and I'm doing disservice to my clients by doing what they think they need and or what they
Mhm.
want instead of what they need, and doing what I think would be better service and strategy and things that really fueled my soul. And I made it about me, and I made it about trying to make them like me. They'd feel better. I'd give them this thing they want instead of what we're supposed to do, which is transform their business and help them get what they want by giving them what they really need, which is going through the tough stuff first and doing our proven process in a certain way. And once I experimented enough to fail enough, and I was losing clients and couldn't maintain them, right? I couldn't quite get it right. I've been sticking with the system ever since, as far as like the proven process of it. I finally got before it back then we didn't call it purity. Purity, that term started floating around a few years in, but that's what it was, coming back to purest form of EOS, not dogma, but saying this is why it works and what works. And I'm giving them clear, stable, foundational water in its purest form. And then we can customize that water for them in a way that works, turn it into whatever they want. You can add flavors to water, right?
Mhm.
So I
Mhm.
was like, we need to give this in its purest form, not in a zealot way, not in a rigid way, but in a real proven results way. And so that was a huge turning point for me to fall on my face. And I was told I would do it. Like, he's like, you're going to do this and you're going to fail. And I was like, no, I won't. And I did.
One thing that I love as I'm going through this proven process of becoming an implementer and starting my own practice is there is so much awareness around human nature that's been built into this system, including that I think what we all feel in terms of wanting to people please. We want to give people that, it's a lot more fun to deliver the dopamine of let's put together this big, sexy strategy
Mhm.
than let's talk about why Bob should not be sitting around this table.
Yes.
And
Yes.
and it's hard. And I think it's doubly hard in that people pleasing when your income is dead nut zero. So I'm sure at some point in your career, whether it was when you're initially climbing or, climbing in your session in your client count or the inevitable setback that I've heard, every implementer has had the unexpected 3 or 4 or more clients quit. I'm sure you've had a little bit of questioning of like, oh my gosh, what could I do better? Has that ever kicked in? And what have you
Absolutely.
done to
What can I
like
do
get pulled
better?
back?
And much
Yeah,
like that first story of I kept experimenting and doing it out of order, I thought that would help me with my income, get more clients. But what it
sure.
did was they didn't stick around, they didn't get results, they didn't refer. And so I actually, in all of that, hurt my income. So the very thing I thought I was
Mm,
doing was actually creating the most pain versus sticking to what works. And then when I did that, it was this abundance thing opened up. So in doing what works, I ended up getting more clients and retaining them longer. There is a fall off rate with new implementers in their first year or two after focus days and after vision building day 2 or after the first quarterly. In those few sessions, those first 1 to 3 to 4, there's a fall off rate that's pretty high because of
mm,
they're doing the experimentation or trying to add too much personality or fun to it instead of doing what really works. And once I got over that, I don't have a very high fall off rate anymore. And I haven't for almost a decade because I'm delivering EOS and it's already been proven to work and they're getting the results they want. And I'm persuading and galvanizing them through the process to eventually land them to that 80% or greater strong. If I have anyone fall out of my book, so to speak, out of my client base,
right.
it's because of some wacky anomaly. They got purchased or,
Yeah.
some major shutdown in their business or supply cycle, and so financial strapped. Um, or they weren't target market to begin with. And it just was never going to work. And so I ended up getting someone who looked target market, smelled target market, felt target market, and turns out it wasn't going to work anyway. Our process is designed for a certain market and they weren't fitting. But outside of those, which are normal reasons to leave, not because I failed them and didn't run EOS, I feel like I've been pretty well, like everyone goes through the whole journey and some of them longer. I've had one client for 10 years, one for 5 or 6 because they're still getting value out of the coaching and facilitation. And we still only just deep dive the tools. We don't add on or create new things within EOS or adjacent to it. I just only do EOS and that's all I do in the world.
I love that, and I'm finding a few threads to pull there. One, it is all fun and games to serve. Ooh, I'm the wacky fun person who's serving ice cream for dinner, but there's a square balanced meal for a reason. And either we're serving up these square balanced meals in, in the right order to help people have a more stable journey.
Yeah.
And the more that you can do that, the more that you as a coach are going to have a predictable experience. Now, tell me, you mentioned some longer term clients. I love that for you. I love that for them. Tell me, in terms of their experience, how, without being too specific, but how's their journey changed with you? How's their relationship changed with you as having a coach for a longer term? How do you keep it, uh, I'll say, fresh, so to
Yeah.
speak, exciting? Because again, like you said, you're dusting off it's the same old binder last time I checked.
It's the same
But
old binder, and it's not so much keeping so I think this is the consistency and simplicity of EOS, and sometimes humans need that, I'll call it ritual, that
yeah,
consistency, that predictability, and so I feel like the quarterlies and the annuals and the pulse and the tools are very much that keep that stability, that ritual, that consistency, that pulse on a business. And over time, the clients that have been with me the longest, these 5, 6, 10-year clients, and I don't have a lot of them. I am
yeah.
seeking to graduate clients because I want to serve others. But do I love the ones that have stayed? Absolutely. I feel like I'm part of their company. In fact, I have all their swag and gear. Most of their employees think I actually am an employee because I've been around so long and I've grown with them from their hardest, darkest points to them thriving and living the EOS life today.
Now, when I think about you as a coach and someone who's been teaching this tool set for a decade plus, there is, I think you mentioned ritual. And I love that because rituals can encourage you to become deeply committed to something and deeply curious about something. One, how do you challenge yourself to keep that curiosity and not get jaded that, oh, it's just another focus day? And then also, how do you currently engage with peers? Are you in a T group? Is it your MCE? What are you doing to kind of sharpen the saw along with your other fellow implementers?
Yeah, I think once I discovered after my 300 session hump, I discovered because I was getting bored. I was like, another quarterly, here we go.
Yeah.
It was just like, what am I going to do? And a lot of implementers experience that 300 session hump. Once I broke through that, I realized there's so much science and psychology and nuance to EOS that I was learning little things here and there. And it's this like prepare like an Olympic athlete feeling where I want to go all in on my sport, and my sport is helping leadership teams at these privately held business. So I want to be the best at the game, and I'm going to
Yeah.
practice, and I'm going to watch the videos, and I'm going to say, well, when did Gino put that in traction on page 130? Didn't know he wrote that there. Why didn't I see it before? I see all these little nuances and different facilitation coaching skills that you learn from other implementers who said, well, I said it this way this time, and that opened it up. I was like, oh, pull that thread. I'm taking that. And
Right.
so all these little nuances get people to see even just IDS, issue solving. They can see the nuances of it better. And I can now see their issues differently. So I'm at, I think, close to 1,200 sessions now.
Oh,
And
congrats.
and I feel like I've entered the matrix that Gino always talked about, that flow, the ones and zeros, the ninja move, right? And when clients are talking, I have to watch now that I don't go blah, 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 blah in my head, same thing I've always heard. I
Yeah.
go, what you don't know is it's this tool and this tool and this tool come together, or you missed the nuance of that. And I'm able to navigate them to a different outcome within the same tool set faster. I'm able to get them to a higher amount of value out of it or more commitment. I am a galvanizer personality, so I can persuade and galvanize them a little differently.
Mhm.
I think a lot of it is in the early days, we believed it was proven. Knowing now it really is, experiencing it, when you start experiencing your first few clients getting the results, you're like, oh, this does work. And so I've seen it so many times that when people say, well, we want to change this and that, I'm like, no. I
No, but
believe
I
it, like,
love that
trust
I
me.
love that, yeah, that deep commitment to excellence, because what you're looking for is flow. You're looking for the ability to play the same tune over and over, but to be able to do it so effortlessly that you're having fun, even though it's the, 1200 time that you've heard the same issue,
Yeah.
et cetera, et cetera. So what does a typical year look like? Or there's probably no typical year. What, in terms of some stats, number of sessions last year?
85-ish. Yeah, I went down in session count purposely the last several years, partly because I became a QCE facilitator and a boot camp teacher. And so it was
Awesome.
kind of a requirement to get your session count down so that you could commit to that work. And when I first started that, it was called community leader. So we did level 10s every week, and we were also the ones who did videos for the training. We had a huge responsibility to support a region. I was the Detroit region QCE and boot camp teacher. So I had to go down in session count about 20% at that point. And then I loved the flexibility of it, and I've kind of maintained it. So now I'm just, as of August last year, I'm just a boot camp teacher. But yeah, so
Okay.
I'm about 80-ish or so sessions. I tried to go down about 20%. I'm trying to maintain the 20 in my backyard. At one time, I went up to like 31 or 35 clients. If you cross 26, you go too far. 20 is designed to be the sweet spot for a reason. And I hub between 18 and 22.
When you said 30 plus, I don't know if you saw my eyes roll back. That just did not compute.
Yeah.
But help me go back to those days, because what I think could be, not so happy accident, right? Is that you work your tail off in business development and you want to help, help, help. And frankly, it is intoxicating to be helping, and it's also intoxicating to be making money. And so tell me about those days when you were, let's just say, driving the car a little bit too fast with some bare tires. And what was the moment where you just said, wow, might need to shift things up a little bit?
Yeah. Well, the first thing is we are entrepreneurs just like our clients. And if
Hmm.
you are a true entrepreneur, not someone who has stepped into entrepreneurism or supporting entrepreneurs, but someone who has the driven gene, like you're genetically encoded. And you mentioned it a little bit in what you just said. We tend to have isms. We tend to
Uh
get
huh.
adrenaline rush addiction. And also the scarcity mindset can kick in. Like when you struggle your first year or two to build your practice in EOS, it's hard. It is
Oh,
harder
yeah.
than you think. I mean, even so, my sales and marketing background didn't even prepare me for the biz dev necessary to do this. And
Sure.
I'd been helping companies for decades do, growth and revenue. And all of a sudden, I couldn't do it effectively enough for myself. So when you've struggled that hard and it's finally working, you can't stop it. You don't know how to say no. And what I had to do was rechannel it into one, I was burning out. So I had to rechannel and do entrepreneurial time management, which is a Dan Sullivan thing. I had to block free
Yep.
space. Blocking my time more appropriately helped, but also realizing that I had abundance and that I could still keep my biz dev engine going. So I've never come off throttle on my biz dev ever. I know you've had people on this podcast
Yeah.
who have multiple times and had to rebuild. I haven't done that, thankfully, but that's only because I was so addicted to the business that I couldn't stop.
No, again,
But but in
it
order
is.
to
It's, yeah, it's a
keep it
cycle.
going and not kill myself, I ended up creating every year I set a goal for how many referrals I want to give in the community, what's the dollar amount I want to hit. So I refer. I refer
Love
locally
it.
and across the country because when I published my book, The Human Team, I also got a lot of other market referrals that I couldn't handle. So that helped a lot to have some really strong players in my own backyard. And so allowing myself to have that space to have just the right amount of clients and not feel the pressure to say yes to everything. It'd be a long discussion on the criteria for which ones I keep and refer. I love 25 and more employee companies, even though we're 10 to
Mhm.
250. I want a little more complexity. I want them to be innovating a little more because my background's in innovation and scaling. And so I want to help those companies that are a little more complex. And if they're coming from like really close, confident client referrals, they're harder to give away than
Yeah.
the ones I just get from other connectors. So I have kind of this ranking and like, how do I know when to just let that one go or keep one? But it's been helpful to manage and balance and keep the engine going at the same time. So biz dev is just a constant always.
What I love about that, and, again, my hope for this podcast is that all of these conversations do layer into each other. And so, you have the conversation that I had with Dan Wallace. He was very open about the starts and stops, the fits of biz dev and what that ultimately did to his practice. And then there is this little bit of, if you do keep the biz dev machine on, you will have the cup that overfloweth. And what do you do with those referrals? And also, there is just that little bit of psychological, like, one, like, mine. I want, like, either the dopamine hit of one more session, ooh, some
Yes.
more money, or, ooh, or maybe even like, ooh, I'm the only one who can serve them. When you know for sure, shit, that's not true.
No, yeah, and
Yeah.
yeah, we're all human in this, right? And it's hard not to feel want it and need it and appreciate it. And when people refer to you, you're like, this is an
Oh,
honor and I don't want to let you down. And so much like any company we coach, it's right person, right seat. So when you have good players in the implementer community that you can count on that are right person, right seat implementers, it makes it so much easier to hand this off. Like if there's a virtual need, like they need to do virtual sessions for some reason, I am not their person. But I know the 3 or 4 nationally that rock star
love that stuff. Yeah.
session, and it works. If you want tough, consistent innovation, complexity, understanding how to activate human potential, I'm your gal every day. And I will push that, but I'm also going to say I'm going to push that. And so if you aren't ready to be pushed, I'm probably not your person. And so a lot of times in my VTH call or my 90-minute meeting, I'm screening that because if they're not ready
I
for me, the intensity or the level and what I'm bringing, I'm too much. And so
So
knowing
we're sharing a brain right now because I want to know qualifying again because it is the attracting and converting and retaining right fit clients. We're on a VTH call right now. Jeanette, I just heard about you. I think you're fucking great. I want to hire you. What are you saying to me that's actually shaking it out where you're able to tell um
we've
or have a hearty guess, good prediction that I'm in it to win it as a client?
there isn't a magic question or statement, but when I'm
Okay.
generally asking about them and often they just offer, this is what I'm faced with and what I'm most concerned about, what I've heard about EOS that I'm not sure about. They'll have questions, right? I go immediately to the enter the danger with them in the VTH call in the 90-minute meeting.
Okay.
So whatever it is, and it varies. I just had
Mhm.
one. So 2 weeks ago, I don't do many 90s, but 2 weeks ago I had one. And they were telling me that one person wasn't in attendance, and I was like, maybe we need to cancel this 90 and wait for them. We ended up having a 30-minute discussion and we decided to reschedule the 90, which we just had a few weeks ago. So about 4 weeks ago, I was having this conversation with them. They're like, you're going to have to convince the owner that EOS is for us and that we need to do this. And these two people I was talking to were the succession plan for this organization. And I said, I'm not going to convince him. And they looked at me and I said, it's your job to convince him if you're the succession. If he's counting on you to run this business in the future, I'm going to share. If he's not going to attend the 90-minute and it's only you, I'll share it with you. If he is, we'll share it then and you guys can determine right fit. But I'm not going to spend and jump through a bunch of hurdles to give you all the testimonials and talk to all my clients and give you
Right.
all the proof and stats and try to convince him because that personality set is unconvincible. So he either trusts you or he doesn't, is what I told him. He either trusts you or he doesn't to be the people to lead this organization and to make this decision. And they went, ooh, the one guy went, "Oh, that hurts." And I said, so I know you want me to convince him because you really want this. But they went back and they talked to him. Then we had the 90. And when they introed at the 90, they said, we've already decided we're doing this. We just want to ensure it's right fit and we want him to hear it. So we did the whole 90, we booked the day and we're moving forward. But it was just, I go right for enter the danger right out the gate. And so I can tell pretty quickly if they can't handle that. And of course, it's all done with all due love and respect, and sometimes a little tongue-in-cheek joking, like, if he doesn't trust you, kind of, haha.
Sure.
But I'm very direct and very open, honest, which is refreshing because many times they have consultants talking to them, sugarcoating everything, and marketing firms who are saying, oh, your branding's going to be amazing and we're going to produce X number of business. And you can tell it's just presentation instead of reality. And I'm just going to tell them truth and what I see. And if I can help or not, I've told people I can't help you. I don't think you're ready for this. And they go, whoa, what do you mean? And they've talked to other implementers who charge half of what I charge and tell
Mhm.
the other implementers we can't afford this. But because I go straight for truth, they're like, we're going to pay double the fee because we want that. I've had enough abundance being an EOS implementer for almost 14 years that I'm not as caught up in that. It's not about me anymore.
Yeah.
And so I think that's refreshing for them too, because I'm not selling it. I'm persuading,
Yeah.
galvanizing them to it, but I'm not selling it. I'm not trying to do another pitch. I'm pushing for clients, but I'm always talking about it. Like, I would love to help more. Does anyone know anyone else who wants help? But I'm not trying to do cold calls or more LinkedIn posts or blogs or overly do too much connection, but I'm always trying to see who's next. Who can I help?
Now thinking about helping with your mama boot camp leader hat on, just what are one or two things that the greater EOS implementer community can do to help our newer implementers? So again, those who are fresh out of boot camp and doing all the stupid things that you're like, oh, please don't do that, baby girl, like don't do that. But not only those people, but the ones who are maybe 8 months into it and are saying, what the hell did I do? This is hard.
Yeah.
I know that we are all extremely busy in not only our personal lives, but in our journeys of building our practices. But what's one or two things that you wish, your fellow implementers were doing a little bit more of, whether it was in Slack, in real life, over the phone, et cetera? What's your call to action?
Besides the gimme, which is follow our core processes, I would say
Yeah.
my passionate plea would be that whether it's day one, first year, or in your first 2 years, that range, kind of newer implementer range, I really wish they would all, instead of trying to modify the community and the culture to something that creates lots of open space and kindness and appreciation. And I want all that. I want celebration, appreciation, kindness, help first, because that's who we are. But I think we've lost sight of the grow or die, enter the danger. And I want them to see that us OGs, which is what they label us internally, anytime one of us comes into a webinar or Slack and says it like, an OG stepped in and said this, and there's like a sensitivity happening in which when
Okay.
we're, because we tend to be a little more direct, we're like, look, don't put your hands on the burner. And they're like, why are you being so mean?
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm trying so that you don't get burned. This is actually, I love you and I want you to do well. And you're taking this super personally and sensitively as if we're trying to do something or we're out of touch or you don't want us to show up. Could you guys soften your tone? And I'm like, I am very much, I love you and I want to do the right thing and I'm not doing this to hurt you, but could you please just like if I answer short in Slack, it's mostly because I don't have time to type a long paragraph of or 10
Yeah.
paragraphs of I love you very much and I hope you take this okay, but stop it. And now let's go like
Yeah.
whatever it is. I think there's a general, like, I'm just going to call it sensitivity. When we are
Yeah.
EOS implementers in our job, part of what I'm wanting to do when I'm coaching or calling anyone in the community is get you prepared for session because you need to model this for your clients. You have to be able to
Sure.
say tough stuff and take tough stuff, give and receive feedback. So give feedback productively, receive feedback in a way that you can take. And I think feedback looping is the hardest thing in our community. How do we give it? But more importantly, I want new implementers here, take it in a receiving mode that really is, we are there to help. It's a help first feedback. It's not a penalty, shaming, blaming. We're not policing. And I think right now it feels like some people feel that.
I love that you're naming that. And I think that anytime you get a community with 913 friends, right,
Yes.
there is so much that it can be solved when we speak voice to voice or eye to eye. And so much of that's not going to happen just because we're not all going to meet in person and we're not all going to have that same experience. And we as humans do like to sort people into tidy little buckets. I said the other day, I was like, oh, it must be nice to be an OG where you paid 5,000 or 10,000 for your franchise.
Yeah.
Must be nice, and that's just my want to make division, where instead it's we're all here to protect and preserve this brand that we love. And again, part of that is giving feedback to each other.
Yeah. And
What a
feedback,
cool gift that we're willing to do it, but we shouldn't be so delicate about
let's
it.
not be delicate about it. Let's not be harsh
Yeah.
either, right? I mean, I'm not saying
Yeah.
that we need to
No, no,
be
no.
a-holes about feedback, but feedback, and I have a close friend who has a program called WTF, What the Feedback? Because giving and receiving feedback kind of feels like, oh, I've got to give it. And oh, why'd they say it? Right. It's
Yeah.
kind of this WTF moment. But it's the biggest trust builder and breaker there is in any company is how you give and receive feedback. And so my passionate plea for any new implementer is embrace feedback because it's coming. Ask for
Hmm.
feedback openly. And we do open, honest. That's the whole point of it. It's a feedback loop. Be open to feedback. Be honest in your feedback. It's
Yeah.
about giving and receiving feedback. So if we can't get good at feedback ourselves, we will not be good in session. So I think we're in the inner safe zone in the dojo, in the community to give and receive feedback, demonstrate open, honest, and enter the danger that if we can't even do it within ourselves, it's going to be really hard for you to do it in session because you have to be able to do that in session. You have to be able to ask the right question at the right time. You have to be able to give feedback in a way that they can receive it. You also have to be able to receive feedback in session. I just had a client this week say, I know you guys facilitate, teach, and coach, but the teaching, oh, we want to move faster. I did a 5-minute teaching on something that could have been 50 minutes and they thought it was too long. And I was like, no, I need to teach you this so we all get a common language and we all have the same platform we're working from, because that person over there doesn't get it and this person wants to move on because they're done. We need to all at the same rate of, calibrate our speed so we're in the race together at the same speed. We're all going at different speeds right now, and teaching will help us calibrate. Then I'll facilitate, coach you to result. But they just wanted to get to result. And I was like, we need to have a little more work to do. But that's in session, able to give and receive feedback. They were able to tell me, well, you're going too fast. I'm going, okay, let me see. Am I going too fast, too slow? Or do they
Mm-hmm.
not understand the context of what I'm doing, in which I need to return feedback? So if the community could embrace that from OGs. It's funny. I've had someone tell me, must have been nice not to pay the 50 grand franchise fee. And I said, we paid in other ways. Like, so I might have only paid 5 grand, but we were pioneers. There was no one within 6 hours of me for the first 3 or 4 years. And so we had to develop the brand of EOS and the provenness of EOS and the biz dev checklist that everyone benefits from.
I love what you pulled on there, which is context. And I think without context, things seem, somewhere between meaningless or a punishment or, again, useless.
Yes.
And just reminding all of us to have this context of, okay, there is this end goal of building a practice. You entered into becoming an EOS implementer because you wanted to build something and you wanted to create an impact on the world. And there's a whole ecosystem that you're entering, and there is context behind why all of this is happening. So, again, take it or leave it, but this is why it's here. And leaning into these tidbits, like, all this thing that you've been so generous to share over the last bit of time,
Yeah.
why wouldn't you?
Dig into QCE, ask tough questions, receive tough answers, ask things on Slack, participate, get on our Monday calls. Hear the tough answers. It might not, and not everyone's going to be right. We have limited information. So sometimes we'll go, well, that sounds like you feel like this. And you go, oh, that hurt my feelings. Go, oh, wait, maybe there is a thread there. Let me pause and think about it. Or let me get on a phone with them. Let's go verbal. I think I did with you a week or two ago. I was like, I need to go verbal with
Yeah.
you, Chris, because I think I might have just quickly typed something in text or Slack that's like, I want to make sure I gave you context and didn't like just cut you off. And I didn't have the whole picture. I didn't want you also to go off rails where some people went and then they spent a lot of time and money, or they ran up against the barrier and hit their head. And I was like, oh, I don't want to see you hurt.
That harkens back to another Dan Wallaceism of, assume good intent and then ask a question. We do a hell of a lot of screening, not only screening for, but continuous screening and filtering out of people based on core values. Trust that there's some good intent there. So I just want to thank you so much. And, for one of the founding 50, it's pretty amazing to get to spend this time with you. And thanks for building all of the infrastructure that people like me who are rolling in, in the last year are just like, oh God, this is a nice house here. It's pretty great. So thank you for building it for us and also just being part of this community.
Absolutely. Thank you, Chris.